you listen to reason? Will you open your eyes? It's a wonder what you'll find with an open mind. You may be surprised. Yeah, gotta get away from this illusion for the sake of the world. This delusion, it's gotta go.
Hey everybody, it's August 26, 2012. I'm Matt Dillahunty. This is Jen Peoples. This is the Atheist Experience. You're watching it. Let's get going.
All right.
That's a lot faster than the old announcements.
It is.
How's everybody doing? How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing okay. Trying to get some sleep.
Are you ready to leave town?
I am indeed.
We're going to Denver
That's right.
to the Ascent of Atheism conference for Atheist Alliance America next weekend, Labor Day weekend. So,
Yeah.
Which reminds me, if somebody else involved in the show is around, if I'm listed on the schedule for next week, we'll need to find a substitute. Sorry I didn't tell you ahead of time.
I think Don and I worked that out last week, so
That's
we're
good.
Yeah.
So we have, this is a live call-in show, which we're going to start taking calls very shortly. Looks like all the lines are already full, so I don't even know if they're going to put the number up for you. I had some stuff that I was actually going to kind of rant about today, and then I found out I was kind of slightly misinformed, and there was some misinformation kind of moving around. There was kind of a kerfluffle here in Austin about the Travis County seal, and essentially my understanding of it now is that they commissioned a brass plaque of some sort with the seal, the Travis County seal. And somebody noticed that there's like two arrows on this seal that point up somewhere in the sky. And somebody noticed that there wasn't a cross there and claimed that there's supposed to be a cross there. Now, I haven't been able to research what the seal's actually supposed to have. And I actually found out about this through Haven't Met at Friendly Atheist, because we're not hearing about this. And I went and looked, and much like Hammett, I could not find a single example of the seal that actually had the cross. I don't know if it's a problem with low resolution, or if this thing just vanished years ago and people are just now knowing, or if it was never actually there and somebody said, well, no, it was always been there, and maybe they were thinking of the seal of the city of Austin, which does have a cross. And Joe Zemecki actually went down and talked to the city council just the other day to let them know that not everybody is Christian and appreciates that. I had this rant all worked out for the Travis County Commissioner's Office to say that unlike all the rest of the atheists, I'm not going to tell you to take the cross off, and I want you to put it on. Put the cross on there. And then next time, when we have a new group of people in the Commissioner's Office that are Jewish, then they can waste taxpayer time and money and take the cross off and put a Star of David on there. And then after we get those people out of there, we get a new group in the Commissioner's Office that are Muslim, they can take the Star of David off and they can put up a crescent. And then the Christians can come back in and put a cross up. And then we'll get like an atheist commission. And instead of taking it all off, because we're all, anti, I'm just going to put a circle with a line through the cross. And we can keep wasting resources and time. Instead of fixing the city, we can sit around and continue to do divisive religious pandering. I don't like the fact that there's in God we trust on the money and one nation under God in the pledge and all this stuff, but I'm not wasting resources trying to get these off right now, because I realize there are probably better issues for us to spend our time and money on. Unfortunately, people like Senator Dan Patrick from Houston and individuals on the Travis County Commissioner's Office don't seem to agree. And instead, they feel like it's very important for them to waste their time in office pandering to the religious right. And, I wonder what they'd feel like if, in fact, the next group came in and, put symbols of some other religion on there. I mean, that's the whole point. Don't smatter your religion all over the place, and everybody is then free to believe as their conscience dictates.
Right.
It's easy. I don't know. Did you have something before we start?
Well, it's just a little on. We get email from time to time about how do you deal with family? How do you tell your family that you're an atheist, and what does that do to family relationships? And I've been open with my family, and it's not like they have been particularly happy to hear the news. to the point where they've chosen to pretty much ignore it. And so for a long time I adopted this don't ask, don't tell policy within the family. You know, you don't talk about the religion, I won't bring up my lack of religion. And it was pretty much okay until almost a month ago, when there was the Chick-fil-A Appreciation Day.
Mm-hmm.
And my brother called me that weekend to tell me that my stepmother and her new husband, who I haven't even met yet, they made a point of going to Chick-fil-A to show their support for Chick-fil-A. Because, you know, it's a First Amendment issue, free speech, freedom of religion, and all this stuff, right? It's not a free speech issue. It's not about freedom of religion. I go to lots of businesses where, you know, the owner of the business has the fish symbol or some other outward symbol that they are a Christian, and that's their personal property, and, you know, it's their right to express that. That's fine. I don't withhold my business from them solely because they're Christians. And, you know, that wasn't why people called for a boycott of Chick-fil-A. The boycott of Chick-fil-A was specifically because this guy made a point of saying, yeah, I give money to groups that oppose marriage equality. And not only that, but he gives money to groups like the American Family Association, the director of which suggested that we should have an underground railroad that basically kidnaps children from gay and lesbian couples and, you know, liberates them, I guess. And this same guy, Brian Fisher, also recently suggested that people calling for Todd Aiken, the legitimate rape guy, calling for Todd Aiken to step down, that was just like Todd Aiken being raped, because, you know, calling for somebody's for somebody to step out of a political race is exactly like a woman being raped, of course. And so this is the group, one of the groups that the Chick-fil-A founders are supporting. And not only that, it's also the Kill the Gays groups in Africa and stuff like that. So this is not a benign, you know, he was just expressing his religious beliefs kind of thing. It was not about First Amendment.
Even if it was. Even if it was, hey, he's just expressing his religious beliefs, and we're expressing that we don't want to, you know, show our patronage to people who do that. Well, and he has every right to spend the money from his company however he wants, and people have every right to say, okay, we're not going to give you any more money. And so, you know, yeah, no one's obligated to support a business, you know, and so anyway. Except me. I'm obligated to support me.
Yeah, exactly.
If I was a business.
So my point on this is that in doing this, in explicitly deciding that she was going to show her appreciation of Chick-fil-A, my stepmother has essentially, she's basically peed on my family.
Yeah.
And I hope that was a good chicken sandwich, because it probably cost her a grandson. She's aligned herself with people who think that families like mine are not legitimate, that people like me should be killed. And so my philosophy on family, if you act like family, you are. If you're not, if you don't, you're not. So.
Yeah, and the really sad thing is that she probably doesn't actually think or support any of those ideas.
No.
But she supports them on some other level, and people aren't even aware.
Well, and to me, I think of it as like, this is like dog whistle politics, where if you claim, oh, I'm pro-family, you know, that elicits a certain response from a certain demographic, regardless of whether the policies the person is promoting are actually pro-family or not. If you say, oh, I'm a Christian, I can tell you that in my stepmother's circle, that is like, for sure, the dog whistle. That will get people running. They will fork over every dollar they have in their account to someone who claims they're a Christian. Even when somebody is sitting there, someone like me or my brother is sitting there saying, hey, they're grifters. You shouldn't give them any money. Oh, but they're Christians. There you go. And that actually happened to her. She was actually taken for a ride. But anyway, so, and I guess I'll just also point out that my stepmother is currently on her, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th marriage, okay? Now, I will say that she was married to my father for 29 years, so, you know, but still. She's been married to 3 guys since then, so she can get married as many times as she wants.
Maybe if she'd marry a woman, she'd finally get it right.
I wouldn't wish that on another woman. But anyway.
I like women far too much.
Yes.
All right. On that note, we're going to go ahead and
Yeah.
get started on some calls. Kristen in Fort Worth, Texas. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you guys doing?
Pretty good.
Good.
Excellent. Well, I just wanted to point to something for everybody here. At a deep fundamental level, we have a knowing that goes beyond our minds, that goes beyond our normal everyday thinking to an experience of being. And I just wanted to do a little experiment with you all and to demonstrate this right here on the air.
Is the demonstration going to explain what you mean? Because
I hope it points toward it.
Well, because you just, I mean, here's the problem when we start talking about these things. You kind of used loaded language, I guess. You know, that there's some knowing beyond ourselves. I don't even know what you mean by that. I mean, because I know things that are outside myself. Like, well, I know that I'm looking at a camera and that's not inside me. So I'm trying to parse out what exactly you mean by this knowing.
There are different levels of experience and different levels of being that each one of us are. And there's a level of mind and thinking, and there's a level that is beyond the mind and beyond thinking. And I wanted to demonstrate this with you if I could do a quick experiment with you.
Okay,
so,
but normally when we do an experiment, we define things really well before we get started, and so we're already in deep water, but go ahead.
Okay. Well, this is a short pointing experience where we're going to be pointing at different things to gain an understanding of what's going on. So if everybody could just point toward the monitor or screen in front of them with their finger.
Okay.
And then point at the floor, please. Point at the ceiling, please.
Are we doing the hokey pokey?
And then point at yourself, please. Now, most people at this point have their finger pointed toward their chest area and not their head. Is that the case for you?
I guess one of my fingers was pointed roughly in the vicinity of my chest.
Right.
But what I was,
why weren't you pointing towards your brain?
Because what I was pointing at was not my chest, but this entire package, and it's a matter of convenience that it's lazy for me to reach my hand up here and point to my brain. It's pointing at me, and this is the central part of me. If I point to a bullseye, I'm more than likely going to point to the center of it and not the outer ring, but that doesn't mean that I think that the center and the outer ring are different things and different, you know.
Indeed. Well, to be truthful here, to have a complete understanding, there are different levels of perception that are needed here, and you can exist at one level, and at a different level you get a different vista, you get a different experience. Like if you go on the first floor of a building, you get to see a certain amount of the landscape. If you go to the 5th floor, you get to see the same landscape a little bit further. And if you go to the very top, you get to also see the 1st, 5th, and the final levels all at the same time.
Yes, as I go higher, I can see further. That's true for buildings.
Yes.
But at the same time, it doesn't destroy the experience of the first level just because you can see further at the top level. If you follow my analogy here.
Nope.
Well, I'm just trying to point at the different levels of awareness will give you different.
You haven't demonstrated any
what
different
are
level
these?
of awareness.
Yeah, what are these different levels of awareness you keep talking about? Can you demonstrate them?
Can you define them?
Yeah.
In many different spiritual systems throughout the world, there is the understanding that we are a physical being as well as a non-physical being all at the same time.
And I won't care about that until you define spiritual and demonstrate that it's actually true, because the opinions of people who want to label things spiritual have no bearing on whether or not what they claim is actually true. What we're trying to get at is, can you define this and can you demonstrate that it's true? Saying that there's a bunch of spiritual ideas or ideas that have been labeled as spiritual that point to this doesn't get you one step closer to demonstrating that anything is real.
Well, is in our mythologies and our various stories across the entire planet, there is a story of this great flood event that has...
That's not universal. You know that's not universal.
It has been noted in so many of them as to be nearly universal.
No.
Not nearly universal, but sure, a lot of people have flood stories. You know what? There's been a lot of floods. What's the point? You're awful quiet. Are you just prank calling us to see how long you can string us on these kind of undefined metaphysical ideas? Because there's other callers waiting.
Well, I was trying to point toward the experience and trying to make this happen for you guys, to give you the evidence that there is more to you than what you think of, than what your mind is.
See, you know what? When I went
to go across the room, are you controlling all the tendons, all the muscles to make it happen? You more or less will it to happen, and it happens. But it's not your doing specifically that is making that occur.
It's my brain interacting with other neurons and the muscles.
It's not. If I want to walk across the room, yes, my conscious mind may be aware that I'm going to walk across the room, but my mind controls my body. Are you implying that my mind does not control my body?
I'm implying there's multiple levels of what it is that is a human, and that you are not in control of every single one of those.
I agree. I agree. I mean, we could have a discussion about free will and whether I'm in control of anything, or whether or not I'm just a consciously aware observer of what's happening to this bag of meat and biomatter. But that doesn't change. That doesn't equate to some sort of metaphysical truth. I mean, the fact that I have a conscious mind and that my brain works on an unconscious level as well doesn't point to some grander truth.
The pointing toward the grander truth that is necessary here is that there is a level that is undescribable by the mind, that's unthinkable at the mind level.
Well,
and yet we are able to experience this, we're able to be at that level as well as at the mind level.
Well, if you're going to talk about things that you can't describe, I don't know how we can continue, because that makes conversation pointless. I don't know what you're talking about, and if you can't describe it, then you can't possibly explain to me what we're talking about. And the fact that
some things have to be experienced and can only be pointed at.
Like what?
A signpost in the road.
Like what? Because I'm pretty sure that I can describe, at least minimally, everything I've experienced.
Exactly, and I'm trying to describe to you that there is a level at which there of being where you are this body, but also more than this body.
Fine, prove it.
Connected to other
Fine.
beings the same level.
Fine, now prove it. That I am more and connected to other beings. In what way? Because if it's just poetry, okay, neat. I'm interested in what's actually real, and are you saying that somehow or another I am actually really connected to other beings in some sort of, I don't know, sense that I'm unaware? That you've got to actually explain what you mean and then prove it, because right now we're just wasting a lot of time.
Well, then I will not waste any more of your time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. If We often ask people to tell us what they believe and why. The why is the most important part. But if you can't even get the what without word salad and using a bunch of ill-defined terms and making claims that what you're talking about can't be described and is experiential, but it points to some grander truth, you don't know what truth is, and you don't know what a path to truth is. You don't understand evidence. You don't understand that you aren't the world. You don't even know how to verify. This is all about, oh, everything that I experience is necessarily true. Wrong. Yeah. How do we identify schizophrenics? You need a way to differentiate what you think is real from what everybody else thinks is real. Reality is the things that we share agreement on that don't go away when you stop believing in them. They're not individualized. There is no reality for you as in this is true for me. It's either true or it's not true. You have your experiences. When I eat food, that experience may be unique to me. What my brain actually experiences might be unique. I don't really think it is all that unique because lots of people seem to like ice cream and get some of the same enjoyment out of it. So lots of people like broccoli, get the same enjoyment. I don't think that the experience is quite as unique as people think.
Yeah, it reminds me of that that kind of other ways of knowing nonsense that, was prevalent probably, 25 years ago or something like that people started talking about this crap. And it's garbage. The stuff that goes on in your imagination isn't real necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, I love all the nifty little analogies. Like you go up higher in a building and it doesn't change your experience on the first floor. Yeah, well, it doesn't.
Yes, my first grader knows that.
It does expand on that.
Yes.
But, this idea that, your orgasms may be absolutely earth-shaking and just completely blow your mind and send you off into alternate universes. Mine are pretty good too. Pretty sure that's a category of experience that is at least roughly similar amongst people. And if yours transports you to another realm where you converse with the gods and they give you information, that's nifty. Now prove it. It's the same category of personal experiential stuff that Kristen was talking actually about. Tom in State College, how are you?
Hey, Matt. Hi, Jen. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Thanks for waiting.
All right. Yeah, I guess I didn't. I told the screener I didn't have a question, but I just wanted to make a comment that I am I'm 48 years old. I'm a recent deconvert, I guess you call it. Still not real comfortable calling myself an atheist. I haven't come out of the closet with my family and stuff like that yet. But I've just been reading a lot, but Dawkins' book really pushed me over. The Greatest Show on Earth, when Hitchens found your show, which has been a great comfort. And I just wanted to call and say thanks for all the information that you guys put out. And I guess I would have a question, knowing, Matt, a little bit about your history, is how long does the guilt feeling stick around? I mean, every once in a while I'll be driving down the road and I'll be thinking, wow, what if I'm making a mistake? But
I hope it sticks around forever. It's going to be different for everybody. And when I say I hope it sticks around forever, what you're talking about isn't so much guilt, it's doubt. And,
right.
And I hope you are plagued with doubt for the rest of your life and that you find a way to actually cherish that, because I find it incredibly valuable. Every time that I doubt, first of all, it's confirmation that I haven't just switched from one dogma to another. My beliefs are based on evidence. I don't believe anything unless there's good evidence for it, which means I'm in a constant state of doubt. There's a lot of things that I'm really, really confident about. As far as like the guilt aspect of it, it's a little different for everybody. I mean, there are people you may not have. Do you suffer from concerns about the threat of hell still?
So, no, I don't know.
And see, that's actually really kind of surprising, because a lot of people who would describe themselves as recent, deconverts from Christianity in particular, some of these people suffer greatly with the fear of hell for the rest of their lives. And there are, Dr. Marlene Winnell is dubbed it religious trauma syndrome, and Recovering from Religious, which is run by my friends Daryl Ray and Jerry DeWitt. They deal with people on those issues a lot. Best thing you can do, find other atheists and interact, and treasure your doubt. Don't let it make you feel guilty. It should make you feel happy.
Yeah, and for the most part it does. And I just found on the meetup site up here at State College, there is some groups here, and I'm trying to get hooked up. I just moved up here from Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, which is a big Bible belt of the Northeast. There's a lot of Amish down there, and then there's tons of Amish up here. There's actually 3 different types of Amish that live up here. But yeah, I just wanted to call and thanks for all the information, and thanks for what you just said and everything. I understand that, and I'll get off here because on the chat room, the guys are all pissed off that you're talking to atheists instead of atheists.
They'll get over it.
So thanks again, man, and you guys take care and keep doing what you do.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Bye.
Chat people. Don't harass nice atheists who are
That's
just
right.
calling in for.
It was a legitimate question.
That was valuable information.
Yeah.
Not everybody's been an atheist as long as you, and It's
And it's comforting for me to hear that there are recent deconverts who are not plagued by a fear of hell.
yeah.
So I'm really happy to hear that.
Given that I have friends who've been atheists for 10, 15, 20 years,
Yeah.
who will still occasionally have nightmares
Yeah.
about it, that says a lot about the damage that's been done to some people by religion. Nobody's affected the same way, and that's why I couldn't answer the question about guilt, because it may never go away, and some people are going to hang on to their guilt a little longer. But. All right, also out of PA in Pittsburgh, is it Hamid or?
Hamid.
Hamid, hi.
Okay.
Sorry for the mispronunciation.
That's okay. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
Okay.
What do you got for us?
Well, I wanted to get your opinion on something. I've heard a lot from atheists that, unlike people of belief, people of religion who have a certain thing that they believe in, whether it's God or other tenets of faith, the atheist often says, well, I actually don't have anything to believe in because there's no good evidence, I have my doubts, so I don't have to really offer any substantiation or evidence from my point of view.
Okay.
And so I've heard this a lot, that the onus or the burden of proof
Oh, okay.
is always on
Yes.
the believer.
Yeah.
Yeah, the way you phrased it is kind of one of those things that we hear quite often where atheists have nothing to believe in. That's not true. Atheists believe in all sorts of things. I believe in probably most of the things that you believe in, with the exception of a God. What you're talking about is on the subject of belief in gods, do atheists have some burden of proof?
Right.
Yeah, the answer is no. And that's because atheism and theism aren't positions or theism isn't God exists and atheism isn't no God exists. They are both positions on the proposition that a God exists, and theists accept that proposition as true, and atheists reject that proposition as true. It is a complete failure of an understanding of the burden of proof to expect atheists to demonstrate that a God doesn't exist. It's the same reason why in a courtroom the onus is on the prosecution. And so you can really view this as the prosecution has claimed that a God exists, and I'm finding that God not guilty of existing. I don't know for sure if that God is completely innocent of existing. I can't know that. That would be the null hypothesis, the thing that could never actually be demonstrated. And so my vote is not guilty.
Okay. Well, my opinion on this is that atheists do in fact have some burden of proof, because by virtue of saying that, I don't believe in God, in some sense you're saying that I'm going to take the position that there is no God.
No, you don't have to do that.
You're practically
Did you
taking
not
that
just
position.
hear the courtroom analogy? Do you think that the defense has a burden of proof?
Well, no, I mean, the way the legal system is set up is that you are innocent until proven guilty.
Right, and the way
Right.
we evaluate existential claims is that nothing exists until it's demonstrated to exist.
Well, I mean, generally speaking, but there are times where you have to assume that something exists, even if you don't have good evidence.
No, you
No,
don't.
why would you ever do that?
No.
Only because the alternative also becomes less believable. Now, in the case of
No.
atheism,
No.
if
Can
you're-
you
if
give
you're
an
gonna say
example of this?
There is no God.
Can you give an example of this wild-ass assertion you just made?
Okay,
That it's
I will, and I'll give an example when it
Okay.
comes to theism. If you're going to say that there is potentially, now there are two possibilities, right? There either is God or there isn't, correct?
correct.
So one of those two has to be true.
Correct.
So if you're going to say, well, I think it's more likely that there is no God, because as an atheist, that's what you're saying. You're saying it's more likely that there is no God.
No.
Correct?
No.
No?
No, we've explained to you
So is
that
it
you
more
don't
likely
have to
there
say
is a
that.
God?
No, what we're saying is that we don't believe.
I understand, but which is more likely in your point of view?
What I'm saying is that you haven't presented evidence sufficient for me to accept your claim that a God exists.
It may be the case.
If you do, I
But
will
that's fine.
believe.
I haven't tried to prove that God exists. I'm
Well,
simply asking
fine
you
then.
what you think is more likely.
The answer is, I don't know. It may be the case that we can't determine which one is more likely. However, if you'd like somebody to defend the case for anti-theism, the position that it's more likely that a God doesn't exist, that can be done too, and I'm happy to do it, but that isn't atheism, and it's not anything that I'm required to do. And I'm very reluctant to allow people to shift the burden of proof, because it is theism that has that burden of proof, because they are making an assertion that the proposition, some God exists, is true.
But I think you're making that assertion right now to say that the burden of proof is on the theist.
Okay, look, I'm not going to
I
argue.
think you have
No,
possibilities that are mutually exclusive.
Stop.
And if we're going to
Stop, you. Listen to me. There are two possibilities. A God exists or no God exists.
Right.
That is about what is actually true. Theism and atheism both address only this one proposition. It is, what is your belief about this proposition? Much in the same way that the defendant is actually guilty or innocent, but we only address the question of guilt. And you either believe that the defendant is guilty or you do not believe that the defendant is guilty. And saying that you do not believe the defendant is guilty does not mean that you believe the defendant is innocent, and it does not mean that you have made any kind of statement about which is more likely. It means that you have not been convinced of the burden of proof that is on the actual claim. That's it.
Can I discuss that example then that you bring up?
Sure.
All right, so if you have someone who's convicted or accused of a crime, and you would like to take the position that he's innocent until proven guilty. Okay, fine. The burden of proof is on the accuser. And if at the end of the day there isn't strong evidence that the person committed the crime, then you have to take the position, the opposite position, that the person is innocent.
No.
No, you don't.
No.
That's how it works. Whether
No,
it's
that is
not.
not how it
whether
works.
you're 100% sure or not,
Look,
doesn't matter.
No,
that is
it's
not how it works.
Innocent.
No, our courts are not set up to evaluate whether someone is innocent or not. We only evaluate whether someone is guilty or not.
Okay, fine.
If someone
Let's
is-
say, look, fine.
if
I'll
someone
change
is-
my language. Let's just say you take the position that they're not guilty.
Right.
There you
Okay,
go.
so, but
That's it.
practically speaking, did the person commit the crime or not?
We don't know.
We don't know.
And so which is more likely?
We don't know.
We don't know.
You
The-
have no idea?
The verdict, no.
Well, you first of all, you're talking about an abstract case, so obviously I have no idea.
Okay, the
But
verdict.
you have no idea.
No, listen to me. The verdict addresses whether the evidence that's presented is sufficient to support a guilty claim. If it is, then you vote guilty. If it isn't, you vote not guilty.
You are making
You do
an-
not determine that
So
someone is
basically
innocent.
then, you'd like to extend the same standard of you have to prove something beyond the shadow of a doubt.
No,
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 You
no.
can't accept that, right?
No, your ass is on hold again. No, please stop putting words in our mouth and please stop spinning off in another direction. Nobody said anything about what the standard of evidence needs to be. Nobody said anything about to an absolute certainty or beyond any reasonable doubt or anything. So don't start
You're
pulling
trying to extend a courtroom standard to the standard.
Are you aware that there are multiple courtroom standards, that there is to a preponderance of the evidence beyond all
Yeah.
reasonable doubt? Are you aware that there's multiple standards in a courtroom?
Okay, well, if you want to take that standard, then beyond reasonable doubt,
Oh,
reasonable, that's...
No, you idiot. I have not said any standard. You brought up the standard. I'm saying don't. The standard is the part of the conversation we haven't even got to, because you are making the gross error of trying to address two prongs of a dilemma simultaneously. You address one. Do you know what a null hypothesis is? Do you understand why we have a null hypothesis? The null hypothesis, by definition, can never be proven.
Can I say something?
I don't know.
Well, first of all, I do see your point. You're making the point that you haven't discussed the actual standard yet, but simply as to who has the burden of proof. I stand corrected, and I do accept your point there. However, what I'm trying to say is an atheist does also have a belief.
I have lots of beliefs.
Yeah.
No, regarding God.
Do I? How do you know? How do you know that an atheist has a belief regarding God? Well, I tell you what my belief is regarding God. My belief is that the theists have not met their burden of proof.
Well, first of all, why do I have to have a burden of proof anyway?
We just had this conversation.
No, but just let's just take a step back. Why is it
Because
theist?
you're
Why has
asserting
any
that
kind
a
of
God
burden of proof?
exists.
I'm not trying to convince you that God exists. By the
Okay,
way.
then why did you call?
Yeah.
No, I'm just simply challenging you as an atheist because I hear so many atheists think that, the standard position is that there is no God.
Correct.
Whoever-
that is the default.
Well, that is incorrect. That's
No,
not
that is not-
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
That is not
I'm
correct.
sorry. Would you let me finish? I misspoke when I responded too quickly.
Go ahead.
The default position is to disbelieve the claim that a God exists. That's true, whether you're talking about gods, fairies, Loch Ness monsters, or whatever. The default position is not to believe something until there is sufficient evidence for it.
Okay. However, in your default position that you claim,
There is no
you
however.
do believe something, and you believe.
No.
I
Yes.
do. I
No,
do.
You believe
I
that
do.
the universe is possible without a creator. You believe
no.
that the first living cell can come about without some force or entity designing it.
No,
you
you
don't
all
even
believe.
have to go
How
there.
are those
No.
default?
Oh, for Christ's
See,
sake.
I was saying no because I knew he was going there.
He's on hold. I didn't hang up on him. I wanted to let you finish.
No, all of these other things that you're bootstrapping on to a rejection of your claim that a God exists are completely irrelevant to the claim. This is basic logic 101. If you assert that something exists, you bear the burden of proof of demonstrating that that thing that you assert exists. I bear no burden of proof, and I am perfectly justified in rejecting your claim until you've met your burden.
The stuff that you're trying to attach to this is roughly like saying, oh, well, if you vote not guilty on the defendant, then you actually believe that it's possible that somebody else committed the crime. Well, yeah, I guess so.
That's true.
But that's not anything that I have to demonstrate is actually true, because that you're attempting by 5 different methods here to shift the burden of proof away.
I'm not saying you have to demonstrate that someone else is guilty, but you have to, at the very least, have to acknowledge that by saying this person is not guilty, then chances are, or it's possible that someone else is guilty. So when you say that, I don't know if God exists, I'm gonna assume he doesn't, or act like or live my life as if he doesn't, then you're opening up all these other possibilities that also are unsupported and are not default positions.
It doesn't matter to the question of whether or not a God exists. That is just another way of attempting to shift the burden of proof. But, as I said, if you want a defense of the anti-theistic position, I'd point out that there have been thousands and thousands and thousands of gods that people have posited, and pretty much everybody rejects all of them except for the one that they cling to. Now, did they have to go around demonstrating that all these other gods were false? No.
No,
Did
I think a lot
did
of
they
people
have to
who
demonstrate?
believe in other gods or multiple gods, they often believe for the standard reasons that people have a certain religion.
Yeah, they don't understand the burden of
That's what their
proof. They don't
parents were.
understand the nature of evidence. They don't understand.
I totally agree with you.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean that you can't distinguish between the different gods and give supporting arguments for one conception over another.
Sure, and there's been lots of arguments for the various different gods posited, and
And I think
none of
they're all
them.
weak except for the belief in a transcendent monotheistic God. I think everything else fails.
And I think that one fails as well.
Yeah.
Would you like to defend that transcendent monotheistic God, or are you just in the business of trying to shirk off the burden of proof?
No, I don't shirk off anything. I'll give you my evidence, and basically it's 2 major arguments. One is the argument from design, and one is the cosmological argument.
Mm-hmm.
So to explain life, especially the first living cell, which is so intricately complex, to just imagine that can evolve randomly from this organic soup, unguided, is ludicrous.
That's called an argument from ignorance fallacy.
No, it's not.
Yes,
it is.
It actually
this is a probabilistic
is.
argument.
No, it's
No.
not because
Yeah,
no, it's not.
absolutely.
No, it's not because you can't possibly have any data. This is something you can't investigate. You can't determine what the probability of this actually is. You don't
know
have
what organelles
sufficient.
are made of,
You
but we
don't.
know the structure of the
You
DNA.
don't have sufficient information to come up with the probability. All you're doing is saying that when I look at all of this, it just seems so improbable without a God. But the God is a magic panacea. Of course it can be used as an explanation for anything. It is used as a cover for ignorance. It is, we don't know how this happened, so I'm going to stick a God in here, and it makes everything work.
No, it's not.
Yes, it absolutely does, because you can also stick in magic does it. And you end up with the exact...
No. It's totally different. It's like a forensic pathologist looking at a deceased person.
No, it's not, because a forensic pathologist has other information. You have exactly one universe, and you cannot go back in time.
What was that?
A forensic pathologist has a large body, a collection of bodies, some of them large, with which to pull together information and a history of information with which to determine the probability of something. They can determine the probability of certain outcomes because we have many, many trials. We have many, many points of data. You have exactly one universe, and you know of one planet on which life exists. You do not have the data set to determine the probability.
But actually we can determine probability, and that's because we know all the different components of a living cell.
No, you don't.
No,
you don't know everything. You don't know what it was like in the past. You don't know everything that's actually required. And the scientists that have spent time actually studying this and demonstrating that it's possible for the building blocks of life to arise from purely naturalistic from purely naturalistic causes disagree with you. So why haven't you gone out and got a Nobel Prize to solve this?
You know for a fact, and I do, that the most brilliant scientific minds these days cannot, in a laboratory, put together a cell from the known building blocks. You cannot synthesize a cell. How does that happen?
Which is absolutely irrelevant, because that's not how cells arise. Our inability to reproduce something has no bearing on the discussion at all. That's like, and plus you're doing it as if we are now at the pinnacle of scientific knowledge. What if we're not at the pinnacle of scientific knowledge, which I'd argue that we're not? That's like saying that only God can make a baby. There's no way for a sperm to get inside an egg cell other than God. Well, guess what? We got lots and lots of ways of doing it now. You're starting.
You very well know that a building cannot be built by itself or a car
Correct.
by itself.
Yes.
You can't just throw parts together.
Correct. But do you know how?
You can't do
Correct.
that. It doesn't happen that way. It's
Correct.
improbable.
Correct. It's not just improbable. I'd go so far as to say that it is practically impossible. Do you know why? Do you know how you recognize that a building was built? Because we have evidence of buildings being built. Because all of the evidence that we have shows certain structures are built, and we have no evidence that these structures arise on their own. We also have no evidence that these structures have any mechanism for self-replication, which does not apply to life.
Matt, here's the key. Here's the key with recognizing design. It's that if you see it, you know it's there. You don't.
Wrong. You recognize design not because of complexity, and not because you see it. You recognize design by contrasting it with nature. X occurs naturally. Y does not occur naturally. Y is recognized as designed. All this recognition is by contrast. Everything that we do is comparative. And so we recognize design by contrasting it with what is naturally occurring. And life is naturally occurring.
Matt, I think you very well know that design is very recognizable, and it's only because you don't want to see the argument, you want to refuse it, that you deny certain things.
No. And thank you for implying that I'm being dishonest. Let me tell you what's actually happening. What happens is I understand that people see design all over the place where there's no design, where there's no intellect behind it. We are programmed to see design because it's evolutionary beneficial. I don't not see design because I'm trying to avoid an argument. I see design, and I see people who are so enamored of this idea of, oh, we just see design everywhere. You're so infatuated with your intuition and the fact that it is most often right. We live our lives by induction and inference, and it is great because today is pretty much the same as yesterday, and the things that we recognize and deal with today is pretty much similar to what we've dealt with in the past. And this is a great way to go about things, except for when it fails. and that is that inductive reasoning and inference lead us to become overly infatuated with our ability to spot things, and you don't know why you spot them. Matter of fact, your claim is that we just recognize design, we just intuit design, we just feel design. No, we don't. We recognize design for reasons, and if you investigate, you can figure out what those reasons actually are.
I think you've sort of lost me there with that last part, to be honest.
Okay,
and speaking of panaceas, when you say, oh, we were evolved to think this way or to recognize design, I think that's just an assertion. That's baseless, to be honest.
So,
no, actually, we have pretty good evidence that
yeah, I mean,
we've evolved
are you like
as pattern-seeking?
I'm sorry. I assumed. I'm sorry. I assumed that you accept evolution just generally, because
I accept evolution in the sense that creatures, animals, living beings did change over time, no question. But as to the mechanism, yeah, that's very much in doubt. And in fact,
there's no doubt about the mechanism.
There is doubt.
No, well,
no,
okay.
There's not.
Like don't tell me.
You have doubts. The scientific community doesn't have doubts about natural selection.
I'm sorry?
You may have doubts. The scientific community has no doubt about natural selection. Or, well, I won't say no doubt. I suppose there's some outlying possibility that natural selection could be turned on its head, but don't make it out. Oh my gosh, let me finish. Don't make it out like there's significant doubt or even noticeable doubt about the fact of evolution and the process of natural selection, because there's not.
Again, I don't doubt natural selection for 1 second. What I doubt, and seriously doubt, is that natural selection and mutation can bring about new organs, new creatures, new species. That is
why would you doubt that when we've demonstrated speciation in the lab? And what is it about this? Do you just not think there was enough time? Because certainly little changes would have to add up over time.
It's not just that there's enough time. I think if you get all the time in the world, I think it really comes down to probability. If something is highly improbable, it becomes practically impossible.
See, you're
unless it is being guided. That's just
natural selection. Natural selection is what guides it. Natural selection is not random.
Yeah, the mutations that occur are random. The mutations that occur are random. Natural selection is not random. Natural selection is also not guiding towards a goal, it's just selecting. But the process of change is such that it filters those things, much as a bunch of sieves with different sized holes in them will filter marbles. There's no mind involved in that, but yet you get this good distribution. Your assertion that that kind of change has to be guided is something that you would need to demonstrate. But as somebody who avoids their burden of proof, I don't think you're going to do that, because one of the things about this claim that evolution needs some intelligent guide is that you can't possibly demonstrate this.
Well, no, I don't doubt that needs a guide. The process you're describing is a very acceptable process to me, but I think that can only result in microevolution, and that's the only thing we've demonstrated.
There's no difference. There's no difference between
to say that can lead to macroevolution.
No. There's no difference. It's all just evolution.
It's all
it's a major difference. See, that's
no,
there
isn't.
It's not.
No, microevolution.
No, listen.
No, the only difference is time.
And if you talk to a biologist, ask them about the difference between micro and macroevolution, and they'll tell you there's no difference. It's the same thing.
Well, maybe you don't understand the difference then. Microevolution.
No, I understand how creationists misuse those terms.
Macroevolution.
Okay.
Well, you know you're on hold, right?
Yeah.
You know that doesn't happen.
No, he doesn't.
No, you don't know you're on hold.
No.
Okay. We don't need you to explain micro and macroevolution to us, because we already understand it. And it's clear that you don't, at least in the sense that you think that there's some hard line separating the two. Have you looked at, for example, the different dog species that are out there in the last 10,000 years, everything from huge Great Danes to tiny little dogs with crappy legs that are probably going to die because we've bred them a specific way? Now that's 10,000 years, roughly, that we've had dogs. Have you looked at the difference that we've seen in breeding different birds? Now, yes, you can do what creationists all do and say, okay, well, they're all dogs or they're all birds.
Yeah, they're the same kind.
And yet, is wolf the same kind as a dog? I don't know, because kind doesn't mean anything in science, and that's the term that creationists often use. But the fact of the matter If we can do that in 10,000 years, and you don't think that bigger changes can take place over millions of years, that's just a failure of your imagination, and it's a failure to recognize the actual evidence, both in fossils and in genetics, that fully support evolution.
Well, I think being rational is to restrain your imagination in some sense.
No.
Dogs have been bred, by the way. This difference that you're citing is a deliberate act by intelligent beings, which is the humans who have bred these animals. And again, they're still dogs. So that is microevolution, and that's not even evolution, by the way, but it's a micro phenomenon as opposed to macroevolution. Totally different ballgame.
Wait a minute, it's a change in the frequency of genes over time,
right,
which is the definition of evolution.
Well, that broad definition does not cite a mechanism, and so therefore that's acceptable by...
No.
Unless you're totally irrational, that's acceptable by everybody. It's the mechanism
No. No, listen.
Yes.
Evolution is the change in gene frequency over time. There are mechanisms that drive that. There's natural selection, artificial selection, sexual selection. There's all kinds of selection pressures that can drive evolution.
Right.
Artificial selection, which is what we do when we breed dogs for a specific purpose. We are doing what nature does. We are just replicating what nature does.
No, nature doesn't have any foresight. It doesn't say, well, we need dogs that
Correct.
are stronger
Exactly.
or bigger
So
or
you
longer.
do understand
So it doesn't do that.
evolution is an unguided process.
Right.
What happens is what selection pressures dictate.
Okay, well, if you're saying it's unguided, I'm saying that there's no way it can explain the speciation
And
we
yet
have
it
today.
does.
And yet it does.
You're asserting it does. That's
No,
what I'm questioning. I'm
there's-
saying if this happened...
Listen
as
to
you
me.
say,
No.
Listen to me.
Your assertion is that it can't, and you need to actually demonstrate that. Demonstrate that it
Believe in the
can't.
power to guide.
Not
All
only
right.
that, but that evolution happened and that it continues to happen
he accepts
is
that.
a fact.
I'm saying that your assertion that evolution can't explain this is one that you need to demonstrate.
Yes, that can be demonstrated with probability.
So
because-
where's your Nobel Prize then?
Where's my Nobel Prize?
Yeah, because you would
Well, maybe
you would
I'll have it
absolutely win a Nobel Prize if you overturn evolution.
Yeah, and
By
so
the way, that's never going to be a criteria for knowing what is a true belief or correct
Right.
position as to who gets Nobel Prize, especially if
Well, no,
the
but
scientific community is already bent on this evolutionary concept.
you know why?
And now
Yes.
you're done. No, you're done. If you're going to start asserting that there's some kind of grand conspiracy, then you
No,
are...
it's not a conspiracy. No, that's not at all what I'm saying. But
That is exactly
there are
what you're
certain
saying when you
institutions-
imply that the scientific community is bent on something, so nobody with that opposing view is going to be taken seriously. They'll be taken seriously just as soon as there's evidence, and you need to ask yourself, why has nobody been able to produce this evidence? This is the Nobel Prize is just a little snark comment. The fact of the matter is that the intelligent design community, as they like to call themselves, has presented us bupkis. They have not been able to demonstrate anything. They've even gone out and set up their own journals so that they can start claiming that they have peer-reviewed journals, but journals are only as good as the peers.
Look, Matt, it's easy to blackball people and block them out, and
And see-
it's
and there
not
you
to
go.
say that there's a
There
conspiracy.
you go.
That's just
That's
too,
exactly what
That's
you're
exactly
saying.
what
too
you're
fantastic
saying.
of a statement. No, but you have ingrained institutions, and that's just the way things work. If
Yes,
you're going to
the
be an
scientific
outsider,
method
you're
is
not going to get
ingrained
funding,
in
you're not going to
higher
get promoted. That's
education.
just how it works. So nobody
Look,
seriously
if
is going to
you-
promote these.
If you think for a second that somebody with a testable hypothesis to overturn evolution would not immediately become incredibly well-funded, and the religious groups alone, the Templeton Foundation,
Yeah.
would pay millions for that.
I know that the independent funding, though, that's not what a lot of academics want. They want validation through the academic community. It's just a different
You
world.
think you wouldn't get validation if you overturned evolution?
If you actually provided actual evidence and data that overturned the model for any discipline of science. I mean,
Listen, by the way, nobody's going to be in a hurry to overturn evolution from a scientific standpoint, because it does happen to be practically the only naturalistic explanation for the universe, or at least life on Earth, and that is valuable for science. I think that's fine to have theories like that, but as a rational being, I'm just not going to accept whatever the scientific community forces upon me. If I don't believe it, it's
No one's
not
forcing it
believable.
on you.
No one's forcing it on you. And
Well, no, but they like to teach it like it's dogma. You've claimed that it's a
It
fact
is-
already on your show.
evolution
It's
is
not a fact.
evolution is a fact.
Yeah.
Evolution
Well, okay, if it's the
evolution is a fact. Things change.
evolution, they're implying
Wow.
a mechanism that is naturalistic, unguided. That's the problem. That's what I
Yes,
disagree with.
because
Okay.
there's no
And
evidence.
if you, now that you
of any
disagree with
other
it,
force
come up with
guiding
some
it.
evidence that it's wrong. That's the way things work. You realize that.
Well, no, I mean, it's the same reason people conclude that someone was murdered. You say, what is the probability of this person dying naturally? When you find that the
No,
probability
that's not
is
how
so
we-
low, you conclude that they must have been murdered. That's
No,
that's
no,
not how
no,
you determine
no, no.
someone's
Have you
been
like
murdered.
never watched CSI or anything? What little pocket of the universe are you in where you think that we just look and say, oh, well, you know, it doesn't look like they could have died by natural causes, so somebody must have murdered them. No, that's not how we actually go about it.
Cells?
We
You don't
actually,
need to- I don't
oh,
need
for
to-
Christ's sake, you're done. Bye.
Thank you for ending that.
No, we don't actually just say, well, we can't figure out how they could have died of natural causes, so looks like it's a murder.
Yeah.
Da, da, da. Oh, where's my glasses?
Yeah.
Looks like he's done evolving. Pow! CSI. Okay, so
Holy cow.
monstrously long call on
Yeah.
evolution and managing to get most of it wrong, and all of it having nothing to do with, well, actually, from his point of view, it does have something to do with it, because if you're an atheist, then you believe that it's possible that there's a universe and a wealth of diverse creatures without guidance. I don't have any problem with saying that I not only think it's possible, I think that that's probably the best explanation. We never really got around to defending the anti-theistic position, which, you know, if you want to call back and pay attention, I'd be happy to actually do that, because I think it's kind of straightforward.
Yeah. Well, and one aspect of the anti-theist position is if you take what it says in Genesis, for example, about the order of creation, and you compare it to what we know about evolution,
Hey, they got that wrong.
they got that totally wrong.
Yeah.
And there's actual evidence to back up the evolution side of it. So,
Yeah, it's really difficult. By the way, we're out of time. They put up the list of people who actually make the show happen. The rest of us just
Yeah.
show up and talk. But we'll see you next week. I won't be here. I'll be in Denver for a
Yeah.
convention. And maybe we'll talk more about anti-theism the next time I'm back on. Bye-bye.
that'd be good.
By the way, where are we going to dinner? I didn't make any announcement about dinner because I don't really know.
Yeah, I don't know either.